We appreciate you guys for being with us this afternoon. Over 2,300 concurrents on your way in. If you'd like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and hit that notification bell. We'd be really appreciative of that, which now brings us to Ravens great Jamal Lewis, Sarah, who stole some headlines.
Yeah, so he gave his reaction to TMZ Sports about it. I kind of cut the segment down to the most pertinent parts. He obviously blamed the turnover, so I put that in the beginning. But he definitely called out the coaches, their decisions and play calling. So I'll play that, and we can react on the other side. And a shout out to Dreams, who sent me a super chat yesterday asking me if I had seen it, and I had not. I asked him to send me a link. He did. So thank you, Dreams. So shout out to Dreams. And then this is courtesy of TMZ, Jamal Lewis, Ravens legend running back.
You just can't go into a game like that against an opponent like that, in that environment and turn the ball over. You know what I mean? Like that was the biggest part. And in any game like that, no matter who you're playing.
Is there something or someone to blame? It's hard because it's two of the best players on the team, and Lamar and Mark Andrews has drawn a lot of criticism. Is that fair, or you just move?
Oh no, heck no. Honestly, why were we in that position? You know what I'm saying? Like, why didn't we take the points and kick the field goal earlier? And so therefore we wouldn't have had to go for a 2-point conversion, first of all. So that in my case is, why don't you take the points early, right? And at the same time, if you did have to go in and actually do that, why not hand the ball off to Derrick Henry, your 250 or 60 pound, running back, that you're paying, instead of, taking that risk of a 2-point conversion and throwing it. That just doesn't make sense. That kind of game, that atmosphere, that's what he's built for. That's what you bought him in for. And I just think that they didn't close the gap and use him where it was mostly needed. And that was, when you're trying to get a 2-point conversion, to take you, to tying up the ball game, to proceed on. You have to put the ball in his hands. And at the same time, put the ball in Lamar's hands. At least run it. At least run it. Don't put it in the air. You know what I mean? And that's what they chose to do. But hey, if it would have went the other way, we would have had another discussion. But at the same time, this is what it is.
What would you say to Mark Andrews?
Man, you know what? You learn from it at the same time, but hey, the probability of you making that catch, on a 2-point conversion is very low, period, because it is a 2-point conversion. But at the same time, I just think that, I wouldn't even be bothered by it. I'm sure it's going to sting and it hurts right now. But at the same time, it's not his fault, because they should have never been in that position.
Okay, so lots of things to unpack here, Bobby. He kind of calls out 2 or 3 different things. The first thing he's calling out is he doesn't like that they went for 2 and they threw it to Isaiah Likely in the third quarter. The Ravens were down 19-21 at that point. He said, kick the field goal. He meant extra point, so that you're 20-21 in that third quarter. So that's the first thing. He doesn't like that they went for it early. He said to take the points. The next thing he's criticizing is that Derrick Henry didn't get the call for the 2-point conversion. And then the last thing he says, that it's not Mark Andrews' fault, because he shouldn't have been put in that situation. Do you have any strong reactions? You agree with all 3 points, agree with some, disagree with others? What's your reaction?
How can it not be Mark's fault? I guess that would be my first reaction to it. He's looking at it from I guess he's looking at it from the play calling perspective of it, but
yeah,
I refuse to live in that world. This is a guy who's made that catch and that kind of play, 9 times out of 10 consistently throughout his career, aside from you take the postseason away. He's been as reliable as any player in the history of the franchise outside the postseason. So I'm fine to nitpick the way that he is the other 2 categories that you referenced, but that's what comes to mind first.
Yeah. So first of all, Ravens legend, love him. We were there at the same time together. He was one of my favorite interviews. He was always available. I remember as an intern in 2005, he was actually one of my first interviews, and I don't remember why, but he started busting out a song, the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, but in a different version of it. But shout out to Jamal. I hardly doubt he remembers me from back then, but I sure do remember him. Absolute Ravens legend. I would have had no problem if the Ravens handed the ball off to Derrick Henry on that 2-point conversion. If you decided to call his number, I wouldn't have had a problem. And like you said, it's not surprising that a battering ram like Jamal Lewis, whose number was called upon frequently, wanted to see another battering ram from the 2 get called upon. So I would have had zero problem if the Ravens had called Derrick Henry's number. And that's even saying something, because when the Ravens got to the 2-yard line with that pass to Rashad Bateman and they went to Derrick Henry, they did a run blitz and he got a -1 yard. So, they had been at the 2. They did, and with that, they had 3 tries. If he had been stuffed for a loss, we would still be having the same conversation. Why did you go to Derrick Henry? Everybody in the world knows you're going to Derrick Henry, that kind of a thing. So while I wouldn't have had a problem if they called Derrick Henry's number, because I agree with what he's saying, he's this 250-pound running back. This is what you bring him in for. I've got no problem with it. At the same time, I cannot criticize a call that gets your guy so wide open that when I go and check the end zone angle, I can hardly even get him in the shot.
Exactly.
Because I rewatched the play several times, and Hamlin originally had Mark Andrews. He was keyed in on it. He was following him, but he let go of him for 2 reasons. One, Todd Monken drew up a great play where he had Rashad Bateman coming the other way. You can see Bateman in the screen over here. He's all the way in the just to the right of the middle of the screen. So by coming across, it gobbled up Hamlin a little bit, whose responsibility was Mark Andrews, but also everybody else was keyed in on Lamar and Derrick. So it's a reason why he was wide open. And then I don't fault Monken for calling this play, and I don't fault Lamar because he threw a pass that was in his hands. So the thing I most disagree with from Jamal Lewis, when he says it's not your fault, you shouldn't have been in that position to begin with, he's babying Mark Andrews in this situation. You can disagree with the call. I have no problem with that. But Mark Andrews, I guarantee, does not want to be babied that way. No, Jamal, I can do this. Like, not only did I want the ball in that moment, but I want it again. I wouldn't give it back to Mark because of what happened. I feel like I'm now going to call on somebody else. You had your chance. I'm not giving it to you again. The other thing he says Mark shouldn't have been in that situation. Yeah, I agree. Maybe if Mark didn't fumble the ball on the drive before, they wouldn't have had to go for 2 also, So to just say I don't blame Mark, that's probably the thing I most disagree with. Although maybe it's coming from a place of like trying to have his back. But like, if I'm Mark Andrews, I don't want to hear a former legend saying, it's okay, you shouldn't have been put in that situation in the first place. That's what you say to a child when a teacher puts you in a bad place or a parent puts you in a bad place because you're innocent and you're too young to understand it all.
Yep.
Like Mark Andrews wants that ball. I don't want to hear a legend saying, it's okay, they shouldn't have gone to you in the first place. This moment was too big for you. You know what I mean? So while, again, I wouldn't have minded if they went to Henry, I also can't criticize him when he's wide open like this. Like, they're all concerned about Lamar and Derrick. They're all concerned about him. The last thing on the analytics, I really want to bring on Ken McCusick when he was talking about whether you should go for it on the likely conversion. So I'm not as good as analytics, and this is why I want to bring Ken McCusick on here. But let me just share my screen real quick. That this isn't like this is so Jamal Lewis take the points, which has been said for years, but not in recent years. This isn't only a John Harbaugh thing. I don't know if that can get any bigger, but I'll just explain it to you. So 538 put up a chart of when you go for 1 or when you go for 2, and the way they describe it is you say, well, what's the overall win probability if you go for 1? And what's the overall win probability if you go for 2, based on the number of points that you're down? So if you guys can see into the screen or zoom in, I don't know, whatever, but you go down on the left-hand side of the chart, if you're down by 2, which is what the Ravens were when Likely had caught that touch, or excuse me, when they scored and then they went for the 2-point to Likely. So the win probability if you go for 1 is a 1.8. It jumps high up to 8.4 if you go for 2. Okay? It is the biggest discretion on this chart. It's not like, oh, it goes from 1.8 to like 1.9. And so you got to like the amount to the chance to win is significantly higher when you go for 2. And so even if you don't like the charge, because I know a lot of people are like, oh, analytics is destroying the game. Think about it logically. Okay. If you go for 2, you know you have 2 chances to go for 2. So if you go for 2 in the third quarter, there's not as much pressure because you know you can do it again if you score a touchdown again. So you get 2 tries at it. Now, if you succeed and you hit that 2-point conversion, then the second time you don't have to go for 2 points because a simple extra point will put you ahead. Now, if they had gone for 1 and then you're down by 1 when Isaiah Likely scored that second touchdown, I still think I like, honest to goodness, Bobby, if the Ravens just had a score, if they kicked 1 for 1 instead of going to Isaiah Likely on that 2-point conversion, then you're down by 1. When you score on that drive in the fourth quarter, you're down by 1. Do you kick the extra point to tie it, or do you go for 2 to get ahead? What would you do? Even if they didn't go for the 2-point conversion the first time. So now you're only down by 1. What do you want John Harbaugh to do? Do you want him to kick the extra point and try to go for overtime? Or do you want him to go for 2 and potentially win the game with the defensive stop? Which one would you do?
I'd probably tie it.
You would tie it. So you would play for overtime.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. What would you
I
do?
wouldn't. I would go for
No,
I
you
wouldn't.
good.
I've seen too many times where like another team with a top-rated quarterback, and I know that Josh Allen hadn't done much in that second half. I feel like they did kind of go a little conservative because they had a two-score lead. But either way, he's got to try to go down and do something, right? And so to me, I've just seen too many times where you put the ball back in the other person's hands, and or you leave it up to a coin flip. I don't like leaving it up to a coin flip in overtime. And I understand Josh Allen still would have had one more possession, but let's say the defense would have stopped him, then it's like, who gets the ball first? I don't like leaving it up to a coin flip. I like taking control of my destiny. And I've seen it too often where they just play for overtime, and then, and I get now you get to like, if they had scored a touchdown, you get a chance to come back and score a touchdown. Those are the new overtime rules. But I just like, let me just take them out right now. That's more my philosophy, is I like to go for it. So even if they had kicked the extra point with the Isaiah Likely one, I still would have gone for 2 at the end. That's my personal thing.